It's Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. I'm Jackson Bird. Today, 2022 has been the year of cheating. The latest scandal to rock a niche community? BagGate at the American Cornhole League World Championships. Plus, Collins Dictionary has declared permacrisis their word of the year. And an exciting update for what you probably all know by now is my most highly anticipated movie of the year, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Here's some cool stuff for your ride home. Early last month, BuzzFeed News declared summer 2022 the summer of cheating. From the world of celebrities and influencers, Adam Levine and Ned Fuller, the now former Try Guy, to the world of sports, lead balls increasing weights in competitive fishing, suspected cheating on a poker tournament livestream, and of course, the infamous chess scandal. It really did seem like the world imploded on itself with cheaters left and right over the summer. And why? David Mack at BuzzFeed News offered this analysis, quote, "Most of us have spent the last few years living by a set of social rules and norms designed to keep each other safe. There were things you could and couldn't do, and being a rule follower or a rule flouter became a political and cultural identity for many, a way of revealing what values you cherished and which community you belonged to. There was a huge amount of schadenfreude and a detectable sense of glee from those who dedicated themselves to naming and shaming COVID cheaters. And while the pandemic definitely isn't over, many people emerged from their bubbles this summer into social situations they had to navigate without the help of experts or authorities. Who's to say what the rules are anymore? Why were they so important in the first place? Because even if you did follow every edict these past few years, I'll venture that you remember the white-hot rage, and perhaps if you're truly honest with yourself, even envy, you felt upon learning, say, that while you were isolating in a crusty pair of sweatpants and 2 bottles of Sauvignon Blanc each night, others were heading off to pop-up concerts, secret raves, and underground sex parties. Cheaters defy the rules. They do what they want. After so many years of worrying and trying to do the right thing, there's something darkly appealing about not caring about anyone else. All this plays into that nagging feeling that we just might be the only ones not cheating, which, it turns out, is one of the primary reasons people do cheat. Nobody wants to be a chump. Sometimes cheating is just about leveling the field. Or at least, that's what the cheaters like to tell themselves. End quote. So maybe that's part of it. Another rung on the ladder of weird pandemic-addled brain behavior. A lot of people are rightfully more tense, and many of us are more socially inept than we were before, and some of that is being expressed in odd, chaotic, and occasionally troubling ways. That and the internet loves some schadenfreude with a healthy dose of virtue signaling, so while we're all still on Twitter, we are going to amplify some of these stories and spin them out of control more than we may have in the past. There might not have been even more cases of high-profile cheating during one summer than usual. It might just have been our reactions that made it so. But nonetheless, I want to add one more cheating scandal to the docket: BagGate. It's a controversy currently rocking the American Cornhole League. Yes, there is an American Cornhole League, and yes, it has rules strict enough to defy in scandalous ways. Now, first, some explanations, because I know there may be some people listening who don't know. Cornhole is a backyard game, also called beanbag toss, sack toss, or just bags, in which players throw small bags of resin beans onto tilted wooden boards about 27 feet apart from one another. And the goal is to get your beanbag onto the board or through a small circular hole at the top of the board, ideally knocking your opponent's bags off while you're at it. And yes, it's really called Cornhole. The name seems vaguely regional, but when you start playing in tournaments and with sponsors, it's all Cornhole. I only very recently learned that cornhole means something else as well, a particular intimate act. Look it up on Urban Dictionary if you don't know either. It's not that shocking, except for the fact that the act shares a name with a popular game. I was at a cookout in Texas recently when I learned what the word actually meant. Everyone kept hinting at something, so I finally asked this older woman who told me, with all the nervousness and propriety of a 7th grade English teacher having to answer students' questions after their first sex ed lesson. But after that first revelation, she opened up a bit. She told me how she always remembers the more vulgar slang term and sometimes forgets that it's also what people call beanbag toss. So sometimes her husband asks if she wants to play cornhole, and she'll be shocked and say no. And then he'll try to clarify and say, no, out in the yard. And she'll respond, I don't care where you want to do it. Anyways, as shocking as playing cornhole in the front yard was to that kind woman I spoke with last month, so too was the revelation that multiple players in the 2022 American Cornhole League World Championships in Rock Hill, South Carolina this past August were using undersized beanbags. First, the number 1 ranked doubles team was accused of using beanbags that were too small, but then when that team asked officials to check the bags of their opponents, those were found to be non-compliant as well. Quoting the Wall Street Journal, since a lighter, thinner bag could provide an advantage, some players are boiling bags or washing them with vinegar to try to make them more pliable and slick. Others are bringing out the sandpaper, hammers, and rubber mallets. Cornhole bags, according to ACL regulations, must be 6 by 6 inches when laid flat and weigh 16 ounces, with slight specified variations tolerated. End quote. At the World Championship in August, gameplay was delayed for 1 hour as officials checked the bags and ultimately decided that no intentional violations had taken place. A spokesman for the ACL acknowledged foul play could have been intentional, but he was pretty sure it wasn't. And moving forward, the league is already implementing stricter guidelines and testing for bags in the 2023 season, and the American Cornhole Association, the governing body of the sport, is releasing new team rules and regulations by the end of this year. They say that many of the upcoming changes are reflective of the huge growth the sport is currently seeing. Quoting again, cornhole is growing quickly, with big-name sponsors and serious athletes. The ACL boasts about 155,000 members, up from 125,000 in 2021. The total number of events tops 22,000 from about 14,000 last year. And top ACL players can make up to $250,000 a year from winnings, endorsements, and sponsorship deals. End quote. And when you know that, it makes a little more sense why anyone might try to cheat at cornhole, and why people would be suspicious of it. There's quite a bit of money on the line, and even though the top players at the August championships were ultimately cleared, some within the community do think it's indicative of a larger problem. All those currently legal methods to make your bags lighter are debated amongst cornhole competitors and fans, with different people having different limits on what's acceptable and what's cheating. This high-profile scandal in August rocked the foundation of what many previously thought was a friendly, innocent competition. It made it all very real, very fast. Cornhole might mostly still be relegated to ESPN The Ocho, but like pickleball, quadball, ultimate frisbee, and other seemingly silly sports, those within its world take it all very seriously, and we may just be seeing a lot more of it in the coming years. So best they root out those bad apples now before the scandals are able to take on an even grander scale. As we begin the penultimate month of the year, brace yourself for all of the annual roundups and blanks of the year. First on the docket for this show is the Collins Dictionary Word of the Year, and it is permacrisis. Permacrisis, meaning an extended period of instability and insecurity, which, yeah, I feel that. But I also don't think I've ever heard that word before. The Collins Dictionary is one of the main dictionaries in the United Kingdom, and their slate of words of the year certainly reflects the particular zeitgeist over there right now. In addition to permacrisis, which I have to assume is being used more over there than here to garner the top slot, they have also included partygate, in reference to one of the many scandals surrounding former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his cabinet's behavior during lockdown, as well as warm bank, a heated building where people who cannot afford to heat their own homes may go. Analogous to food bank, in the US we usually call them warming centers. But the inclusion of warm bank on this list hints at the ongoing energy crisis in the UK, where many are worried about being able to afford to heat their homes this winter. Another word on that list is Carolean, the word that will refer to this era of the reign of King Charles III. And there's another word I've never heard of that I'm assuming is popular with someone in the UK, splooting. It is a noun meaning the act of lying flat on the stomach with the legs stretched out. It's a great word, but it hadn't reached my filter bubble before today. The list also includes a few words and terms that are common outside of the UK's borders, including quiet quitting and vibe shift. They have also included sports washing, which means to distract from a controversial activity with the promotion of sports events. And I love that as a term. It's already on full display with the pun-filled Santa-starring commercials for the upcoming FIFA World Cup in Qatar that wants you to imagine all is jolly and bright and completely without controversy or human rights abuses. There is also lawfare, the strategic use of legal proceedings to intimidate or hinder an opponent. And finally, the sole proper noun on the word of the year list, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Altogether, the list of words of the year really add up to illustrate the number one word, permacrisis. Here's a bit more on what Collins Dictionary itself had to say about the word. Quote, "The 2020s have certainly seen their fair share of upheaval, and we're only 2 years in. Already this decade, we've had to contend with a pandemic and its aftermath, a brutal new war in Europe, and in the UK, an economic crisis that saw the Bank of England warning of a material risk to financial stability. We've also had 3 prime ministers so far. How fitting, then, that 2022's word of the year is permacrisis, a term that perfectly embodies the dizzying sense of lurching from one unprecedented event to another, as we wonder bleakly what new horrors might be around the corner. Much more of this, and we might have forgotten what stability and security ever felt like." End quote. Indeed. But perhaps like the perm hairstyle, and unfortunately much of the world's permafrost, this permacrisis won't turn out to be quite so permanent after all. Well, the time has finally come. We officially have a theatrical release date for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. For one night only, the horror take on the classic children's series will air in US theaters via Fathom Events. It will also have a theatrical release in parts of the UK, Mexico, and Canada, although exact details have not yet been announced on those. But the US one-night-only event will be on February 15th. Which I personally think is fitting because one of my favorite Valentine's Day party themes is Halloween, a chance to lean into the terror and heartbreak of love while also bringing your Halloween costumes back out for an encore performance. In addition to the theatrical release, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is still slated to get a streaming release before the end of this year, most likely just video on demand, not attached to a major streaming platform, but details are still yet to emerge. However, the Collider article that I read about this did tease one additional bit of news that I hadn't heard yet. Director Reese Frake Waterfield is already working on another movie to add to his oeuvre of children's classics turned slasher films. The next one will be called Peter Pan Neverland Nightmare. I cannot wait. And if you're a new listener or missed the episode where I explained this whole Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey business, including how this is legally possible and why it's actually a pretty smart critique on adult nostalgia, I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. But that is it from me for today. This show was produced by Ride Home Media. I'm Jackson Bird, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.